All right. Well, welcome all. Thanks for showing up. Again, if Easter is your tradition, uh, and thanks for showing up the Sunday after. Well, that oh yeah, those were not devil horns. They were Christ is risen. Everybody has to do bunny ears now. Well, welcome. We do this monthly. It's just a way to gather and hang out a little bit. Um, Today, I wanted to spend our time in a couple of things. One was to see just how folks are doing, like what's been going on. I think like this group has kind of turned into both a technical support group as well as just nice, Eric. Well done, well played. As well as a just a place where folks are gathering to get support and things. So I want to check in what we're doing, and then I have this idea. I would love to hear some of your Zoom hacks and things that you've learned recently or ever. Either things that you've noticed, you're like, okay, this must be a simple fix. Somebody help me out with this, or oh, I was this day old when I learned this. So would love to hear some of those things. Because I learned a couple of them this weekend that I was like, oh, I did not know that and should have. Um, and then I'm going to actually post something in the Facebook group, just kind of a Zoom hacks post thread to see if we can get some of those other things, because I think there's a lot that we could learn from each other, just on simple things. So again, the our hopes for our time together. If you are visiting or your first time with us, welcome. We try to introduce yourself when you speak. This is not heavily moderated, so just we kind of leave space open for as many people to participate as possible. It is recorded and I post it on my YouTube channel. And then if you could just introduce yourself when you speak, introduce yourself, your pronouns, kind of where your context for ministry, where you're serving, just so we get a sense of where you are. And then you can ask a question, jump in. I've asked Marty is co-hosting, and Jeff, I'm just gonna make you a co-host too, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir. That means that Marty and Jeff can't raise their hands or anything. We're not more than one screen today, so you can actually just flail about or just unmute and ask a question if you want to, or you want to share. When we get past more than one screen, then we'll use the raise hand reactions to just help with things. So again, thank you all for being here. And again, I don't know if we have anybody new or not, but welcome, welcome, welcome. So the first part I'd like to do is just check in. How are folks doing? uh Zoom adjacent would be good. Like, I mean, share what you want, but just in terms of your Zoom life and how you're feeling about things, maybe if you're moving into next steps, how things are going, just give us a minute or two of checking in about how things are going. I will start just to model a little bit. So I'm Bruce. I'm the pastor at First Presbyterian Church in Palo Alto, which is a older congregation. I don't know, 150 active or something like that. And we've been completely Zoom, and we are not going to any in person and probably until the second week of September. We're starting to plan that out at this point, and having debates about two separate services or hybrid now. That's kind of where we're in our discernment, and I don't know where we're going to end up. We are certainly feeling from some of our folks a tug back to geographically centered ministry, which we've been kind of outside of that, as well as, I don't know if you all are feeling this, our folks are wanting to know exactly what everything's going to look like on the other side. And I don't blame them. I mean, we've been in uncertainty for the past year. We want to know what's going to happen, but that's been one of the things. Is like, well, I'd be open to it, but I want to know exactly what it's going to look like. And I'm like, do you know me? Right. So that's been an interesting thing to try to not be frustrated with, honestly, but also to just kind of understand where people are as we're thinking about what's next. So I'm doing fine. Some of you who follow me in other places, we've had my father-in-law died a couple of weeks ago. My mother-in-law is not well. It's been a lot of things going on just in our own kind of COVID pandemic grief work. And then with all the anti-Asian stuff going on, engaged in a lot of that work. And preached a sermon that had to remind my congregation, like, you have an Asian American head of staff now, and what is that going to mean for us? And so it was good. It's been a good space to be. They're my people. It's not a particularly diverse group, but we're hanging in. So that's me. I would do, I'm not going to worry about mutual invitation or anything, but if you feel like sharing or question or anything, you can just feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Kathy.
Yesterday, thanks to points you'd made a month ago about how important it is to keep the folks at home feeling like they're connected in the Zoom process. We had a candidate for pastor who preached from the sanctuary. That was the first time that's ever happened. But I moderated from my office on the Zoom screen. And so we served communion together back and forth. So that maintained that connection for the people at home. And we got good feedback on that. We didn't want it to be the elite, the PNC in the session who get to be in the sanctuary only, and everybody knows that, and we're not part of the elite kind of thing. That wasn't cool. But it in all went really well. Other than the fact that I almost got locked out of my office just as worship was beginning. So I almost had to moderate in the sanctuary with everybody else. Crazy story, but there were about 10 people running around. That's how many were in the building. So that's how many ran. But very, very pleased with how that went. It was set up very simply, a snowball mic on a boom mic stand that could pivot between the pulpit and the communion table. So we put the communion table up on the chancel next to the thing, so it could just either way. And there was a laptop on a music stand that was the camera that was aimed at those two spaces covering the microphone. And then he set up a projector to project the Zoom screen adjacent so that the candidate could see what was going on with the Zoom, and 2 regular speakers that you'd have at home for your computer were used for the sound. Very simple, it worked. And God was praised. There's a new candidate for the pastor.
Awesome.
So that's positive on my part.
That's exciting. It's amazing how many transitions have been made during this time. So I do also do some coaching on the side, and one of the things I've been saying to them and to myself is no major decisions should be made during a time of pandemic, and the pandemic has magnified certain things that may force major decisions to be made, and kind of holding those two things in tension, which I think are really, and it's an exciting time. So that's exciting, Kathy. Glad to hear transition. All right, other folks, and those of you that are just joining us, we're spending a little time at the beginning just checking in, kind of Zoom adjacent, how you're doing. You can share whatever you want, though. This group is supporting each other. So go ahead and Eric, go for it.
So my name's Eric Travis. My pronouns are he, him. I live in the Detroit, Michigan area. In November, I was let go of my job as a youth minister for the Episcopal Diocese because of restructuring, but was hired on by a church to do the technical stuff. So I've been doing that. Yesterday was our first hybrid worship. We now allow up to 25% capacity in our churches. Still wanted to do Zoom and having everyone feel connected. So we did, and it worked well. A large screen TV up front that showed the slides and everything we showed on Zoom. A smaller TV in the pew facing towards the priest so that they could see what was on Zoom. So we had one camera that was facing towards them, and then one camera facing towards the congregation. And 2 Zoom accounts, one that acted as the congregation, that got to see the people in the congregation and also see the pastor. And then there's no singing allowed in our spaces. So we played the music and people talked the songs, but it went well. There were no major snafus. It took me about 10 hours to get it all set up and figured out and all of that, but it really went well. And again, as Kathy had said, Jesus was praised, the gospel was preached, and it went really well. When we had just done an Easter vigil the night before with our Arabic Christian community. So it's the church I work for is in Dearborn, which many people may know as the largest gathering of people from the Middle East outside of the Middle East. And so we have an Arabic-speaking Episcopal congregation there, as well as an English-speaking one, and work together with that. Learned some new things, and got to add graphics cards and all of these sort of fun things, but it was really a great experience. And it's by going to groups like this and hearing what people have done, and having people, not only the priest, but people in the congregation, willing to be full of grace as we try things out. That was so wonderful in this process.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that you're right. That the grace part, I hope it sustains. That's going to be like as we move into what normal is, people are going to like, we so want it. I hope that part continues on, because that's the Sunday after Easter. That's my biggest fear, is like we stop kind of giving each other that space. But yeah, that's awesome. That's so good. Thank you, Eric. All right, other folks want to check in. How are you doing? What's going on? Jane, and then Sally.
I'm Jane Smith, she, her. I'm a lay person at Community United Church of Christ in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm on the worship team doing some of the tech stuff, and I have no comfort at all with tech. So it's been a fun year, actually, and we've got a great worship team. We are entirely on Zoom, but beginning to do some limited in-person, not worship things. Some tailgate parties that only a few people can come, and a picnic at a park and things like that. But we're beginning to think about what will it mean to begin to come back for worship as our people are getting more vaccinated. We have a lot of older folks who are fully vaccinated, which is wonderful. So we're beginning to do that thinking. And the big challenge we've run into, and I appreciate the people who posted on the Zoom Faith chat with some ideas. The front of our sanctuary, the chancel area, is flooded with light, and the rest of the sanctuary is dark. We've never used a screen in there, and it's hard to imagine how we would show the congregation what would be happening at home in a space where south-facing sun in the south. So like really flooded with light. So if anybody has any suggestions about how to handle that, I'm still looking, and you can post them with my question on the Zoom Faith thing, or you can, I don't know, I'll put my email in the chat, and you can contact me if that's okay.
Jane, I'm curious, like how you, like what's been helpful from your role, because a lot of us, like we're paid to be there and all that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah.
What's like, how has this been helpful to you? Like, why do you keep coming?
Interesting. So I actually have an MDiv, but never trained to be a pastor. So church is kind of where I live. It's it's my home space professionally, even though I don't get paid. So that's, just that makes me a little unusual among lay people. And I keep coming because it's interesting. I mean, the work of trying to help us have a good Zoom life together, not just in worship, but also in worship, has been fascinating. And then there's been this marvelous team from the beginning, from our third week of lockdown when we started Zoom worshiping. We had an interim pastor who had never done anything like this before and was 3 weeks from leaving. And then we were going to have a gap before our new person came. Like, it was this perfect storm of total incompetence by everybody. And so it was a lot of fun because,
love it.
There was no way to get it right. There was only, this is better than nothing. And there was lots of grace, as everybody keeps saying, but the team has stuck together.
Perfect storm of incompetence. I'm gonna
Yeah,
go with that.
and people have sort of risen to different roles. So our youth and young adult leader has become a co-leader in worship and just wasn't before,
Mhm.
and is doing marvelous work. Another person who's a lay person who loves video stuff but hadn't really done much is doing all the videos for
That's
worship,
great.
and our music is amazing. So people are kind of rising up, and we've got lay leadership every Sunday in worship, and children and youth reading scripture, and all these things that we didn't take the time to do. Now there's this opening, everything's broken open. So it's been really stimulating for me as a member.
That's great. That's all. I mean, I think that's what many of us have experienced, is like we've been forced into this, that we would have loved to have done in many ways, and all the elements you're talking about at some point, but it would have taken forever, and now we're forced into it. And so how do we hold on to some of that creativity that's been unleashed? Thank you, Jane. Sally, you are next. Go for it.
So I want to echo what Eric and Jane have said, that this group has helped keep me aware of continuing issues within Zoom to help me feel brave enough to address them. But for the past 2 months, we had been doing everything by Zoom remotely with nothing in the sanctuary at all. And beginning in February, we started trying to move some of our controls into the sanctuary. In March, I started leading worship from inside the sanctuary. By the way, I'm in Nashua, New Hampshire. And we still haven't invited the congregation to join us. Our hope is in May to begin to allow people to register and come and sit remotely and be masked. But every week we run into a new problem. And like Jane, our sanctuary is like a goldfish bowl. There are windows all the way around. They're clear glass. And so right now, our short-term solution is to close the blinds or to get blinds, but that will not work for it. People are saying, when we come back, we want to be able to see outside, because the sanctuary is surrounded by woods, and it's beautiful to have just the glass there and have the nature in with us. So, but what we have done is we've used the sound system, which we already had in the sanctuary, and we have figured out how to connect that with Zoom. And just this week, we got a remote camera where from the back, they were able to zoom in on me. I guess there's no other word besides do a close-up of me. Too many words, use of the word Zoom. But I also had the laptop on the lectern in front of me. So it was a close-up of, so there was already one computer close to me, which also focused on the communion table right behind me. And then we've worked at projecting on the wall. One thing we're working on, Jane, is we're going to be exploring, it may cost more than we can afford, but getting a projector with a really strong lamp to overcome the ambient lights in the room. We think that may be the long-term solution for our light problem in the sanctuary. So, but yes, and our music team has gotten phenomenal at recording their voices all from home, sending them to our pianist who puts them together. It sounds like he has an orchestra at home now. It's just, they've really gotten into doing the music. And so worship is exciting every Sunday. I never know what it's going to be like, but it's always fun and amazing. So,
That's awesome.
But thank you for this group, Bruce. This has been a rock I count on.
Good. I'm glad to do it. Glad to do it. All right, other folks, just checking in a little bit. We'll spend another few minutes, and then go ahead, Tijuana.
Hi, I'm Tijuana Gray. She, her. I'm in Topeka, Kansas, USA. I'm really tired. That's like just, I think I've said that like 40 times this morning already. I'm just tired. Where am I? Also super excited. I'm celebrating 28 days left until I see my spouse again. We have a long distance marriage because she is a pastor at a church in Northwest Connecticut. And we have not seen each other since March 17th of last year.
Oh, my goodness.
So I am now fully vaccinated. She has her second shot in a couple weeks. And then a couple weeks after that, I am on a plane. And my church is already like, we won't talk to you. Like, we won't, like, for a week and a half, I will be gone. So I'm in that space, and I think I'm going to start crying, and I didn't mean to. Church-wise, we're still 100% remote. I have an older congregation, not particularly interested, like tech interested. Right now, we're doing some really powerful liturgy stuff, like Good Friday. People are just like so overwhelmed by the Good Friday service, which we got from Sanctified Art. I did not do it myself. And that like there's always the one person who's like, wow, that was so great. Can't wait till we do stuff like that in person. Like everything has that tag on the end of it. So we are now just now starting to have the conversation about how we can get back into our building, and what is the least amount of tech that we can do, and still, because people still want to have some sort of hybrid experience just in case, because we have one person from England who's been joining us, and they like that as an idea. So we're trying to figure out how can we make that happen when I'm the main tech person. And I've been trying to pull back on the amount of stuff that I am doing myself, because the more I trim it, the more I realize just how much it takes me out of leading worship. Either I can lead worship or I can do the tech. And as much as I like it to think I can do both of them, one of them suffers. So I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you.
And it's warm in Topeka. I'm excited.
And I think we're all thrilled that you get to see your spouse. I mean, of all of the things, I can't imagine. So wonderful. Isn't it amazing? I rocked into a vaccination site 12 days ago because apparently California was my turn. And they said, oh, you get Johnson & Johnson. You're done. I'm like, sweet. Like, it was like, okay. I mean, it's amazing kind of. And our kids now have appointments. And I mean, California is starting to open up a little bit more, 16 and above. And it's just amazing how that tempered, but is excitement kind of moving forward. So congratulations on getting to fly and all that. Yeah, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think, I know how many of you are experiencing this idea, like we like the idea of some of these things that we've been doing, but then can we really pull them off long term? I think the sustainability question is huge for pastors right now, especially those of many of you who are doing both. What parts, long term do you give up and what parts don't you, and that kind of thing. So yeah, feeling it. All right. Anybody else would like to share kind of how you're doing? We're just, again, if you just come in, we're just sharing a little bit of checking in. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff Spencer, he, him, his, Fremont, California, at a United Church of Christ, Disciples of Christ congregation. So one of the things we've been doing to keep ourselves engaged is trying to mark seasons with just little tweaks to the order of worship. And so Easter started yesterday, and so we did some tweaks to the order of worship, and people weren't paying attention. And so there were some snafus with that. Our communion elder had some issues with her sound. So there was technical glitches like that, which just happen. But we had a baptism yesterday. We did it in the afternoon as a second worship service. A woman who's, I don't know, I'm guessing probably in her 50s, who is planning to join the church and wanted to be baptized. And so we did it out on the patio at our church outside with a few people, and just set my phone up on a tripod to Zoom. I haven't checked to see how many people were on Zoom to be part of the service, but it just exciting moment for our church that we've got folk that are feeling connected enough that they want to actually join the church. We do get, I always every week get at least one question during our coffee hour so any idea when we're gonna be coming back? And my answer is always the same. We're deciding quarter by quarter. We've decided not through June, we're staying 100% Zoom. We'll decide in May what happens for the third quarter of the year. And yeah, so that's great. I'm supposed to be on sabbatical for 3 months in 2022. And I found myself starting to, think about what do I want to do during that sabbatical. and thinking about plans and thinking, I can't even plan about the third quarter this year. How can I plan in 2022? So there's that. And I'm also feeling a little, oh, I don't know, pity party that I get my first shot, or maybe my only shot on Wednesday. So I'm glad for that. And that travel will be in my future. But it looks like my vacation is all going to be taken up with family obligations. Because we've had a year without doing any family stuff. And so, and my dad and stepmom turned 90 during this past year, and we didn't have a big party for them. And so family wants to do something, and I have an nephew graduated from high school and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm feeling a little self-indulgently pity party about that.
Hey, we will all join you in your pity party. We all have to have them. I got my first familial "you're not invited to the wedding" card, which was so nice, actually, because I think everybody was trying to figure out what we were going to do, and it's like there's no like drama. It was just like we knew this date was coming up. We've decided to go really small, so we're not going to have the big family. And some of you know my family, we're super extra, so it was actually really kind of a relief to be like, oh, so you may not even be invited to the graduation, Jeff. That's where I'm going. That man might not even, because like our kid's graduating this year, and we've already told our family that there's two people are invited per kid, and so it's like, and I think it was like, oh, okay, good. Like we don't actually have to go there. So you can zoom in all those. So pity parties, everyone. It's all right. There you go. All right. I want to move, unless somebody else wants to share, I want to move into a few hacks. Like think of the things that you have like went, oh, how come I didn't know that before? Because somebody else in the room, it may have been simple to somebody else, but somebody else didn't possibly know. And then you can share those out, or if you have questions, you're like, this must be a simple one. What's the hack? Like that kind of thing. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you that I just learned. So because we don't pre-record and we don't show video, we hardly ever do video through our presentations. And I kept getting that gray screen, the gray thing at the top when you show off. I did not realize that you can just turn that off if you take optimized video off, and that takes away the gray thing. I was Sunday in the middle of worship old when I was like, what if I just click on this button? And then it went away because everything was showing up, and people are like, Bruce, these gray boxes are showing up. I'm like, I don't know why. So and I just unclick that, and during the video that we were showing, then I just optimized it, and it had the little gray bar on top, but that was fine. I wasn't worried about that. But during the rest of the time, it was like, this hasn't happened before, and just forgot. And the second thing was, we ring a chime at the beginning of our worship every Sunday, and we do some other things, and it had worked fine this entire time. And then there must have been some upgrade with Zoom that it was cutting off it would ring and then it just stopped. Like the sound would, but it was before it was working just fine, where you'd hear the whole ring, and something happened where that no longer was working. So now, I mean, you all know this part. Like I had to tweak a setting to allow me to toggle original sound on and off much faster. And so just flip that. So in my settings now, when I ring the chime, I turn original sound on, ring the chime, turn original sound off, and then we can go through the rest of the service. So discovered that Monday, Thursday, I was prepping for that. And then because Good Friday service, we rang the chime 7 times for 7 less words and all that. So those are 2 hacks for me that I'm like, those are very simple. Many of you probably knew those, but I was this weekend years old when I learned a couple of those. So quick hacks that you all have learned, or that you're like, this must be a simple one. Help me out here, people. What, anything? George, go for it, and then Sally.
Hey, George Lynch, Rancho Mirage, California. Longtime Presbyterian, but I've been worshiping at an Episcopal church, St. Margaret's Episcopal in Palm Desert. One of the things that I did not realize, I was recently hosted an event that was recorded, and you can, if you do recording and you don't want everything on the screen, you can go in and you can start and stop, or you can change kind of where you want the recording to display and where you want it to end, and it doesn't affect the whole recording. That's all there. So you can send out that link to people. Now, having said that, I don't think Zoom is very good at recording at all, but it's one thing that you can do if you don't want to have certain parts of your Zoom showing up when you send a link out to people.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. So Jeff, Jeff, you said it, so I'm on a Mac. I don't know why it started showing up though. Is there?
So when we do video, and we do a fair amount of video for our music primarily, and when I've been driving the bus, as we say, showing the power, and we're using PowerPoint, and the video is embedded in the PowerPoint. So when we are sharing the video, when I'm sharing from an iMac, the gray boxes don't seem to appear in the user experience.
Yeah, well, as Kathy Keener said, she saw them on our Good Friday service. So yeah, well, interesting. I don't know why it just started happening. We've been going this whole year, and then all of a sudden it started happening. So I'm gonna have to do a little more.
Now, the other difference that I've noticed between a PC and a Mac is when I'm sharing the PowerPoint, it goes into presentation mode, so it takes up the whole screen. On the Mac, if I'm in Optimize for Video, the sidebar of pictures of people in the meeting stay there, and the little buttons at the bottom of the Zoom screen stay there. And those would be gray boxes if they were on top of the PowerPoint on my PC. But on my PC, they disappear. I'm in Optimize for Video, so I can see the whole slide. Which means I can't read the right side of the slide because there are pictures over it. So
awesome. Thank you. Sally, you were going to share something.
Well, this may be so simple, everybody else has figured it out, but when I first started doing PowerPoint on Zoom, I was just doing everything myself on my computer. So I was always just sharing a portion of my screen and had the PowerPoint in that portion, so I had other controls around it. And I've stayed in that mode. And finally, somebody asked me on Sunday, well, why don't you set up PowerPoint to run as slides? And I said, well, because it takes up my whole screen. And he said, yes, but you're not using the rest of the controls right now because we could do that now. And it just hadn't even occurred to me that I could graduate. And maybe that's already occurred to all of you, but I just thought I'd tell you that there are graduation levels in this to get more people involved. So
oh yes, certainly.
Yeah, there we go.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and I think it also depends on kind of where we all started and and then you're like, oh, okay, I can try this now, or I can do this. And I think that's the hard part, which I've loved about the Zoom group, is there's a lot of humility around and perspective that not everybody started at the same place, and it's just fine. Like, we're all trying to figure out where we are and where we're headed. So thank you, Sally. All right, other hacks that you've discovered. One of the things that I've started to do, I used to do 2 monitors, actually 2 laptops, and now I've just decided to use my phone. So I just plug in. I will used to have this kind of elaborate setup, and now I just have a standard link for my phone to get into a meeting. So I'm watching the presentation right here without having to have 2 laptops and plug in and all that kind of thing. So I simplified down actually from 2 monitors to just watching the presentation to see what they're seeing on my phone. And that's really helped a lot. And I was forced into that when I had to travel a few weeks ago when I was in Arizona for 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, I don't want to bring 4 computers to wherever I'm going. So that was something I'm like, oh, that's all I really need is the presentation thing to see what people are seeing. So that one actually was really helpful for me, just to let go of any extra equipment. But Other folks, hacks that you've discovered, questions you've always wondered, why does this happen to only me? Because it's probably not. Eric.
So a couple of hacks and one in response to something that Jeff had said. In your PowerPoint, when you create your PowerPoint slides and when you're presenting it, it takes up the whole screen. If you go into your slideshow and when you set it up to set up slideshow, move it down to where it's on another computer at a kiosk, it will not automatically go full screen. You can actually make it whatever size you want on your screen, and then it'll still show up full when you screen share. But that was something that I had learned in PowerPoint so that I can
Did
see.
you write that down? Because I couldn't write fast enough. Could you put that in the chat?
I will do that. The other thing that I did, and it's just for me because I like to be able to have a little more control, is I went and bought a Stream Deck, which is a device that connects that allows you to press buttons and it does all your hotkeys for you. And so I have this, won't reach, but it's a little device. Let me just show this to you. It's a little device that is 5 by 3 that you can program all the buttons and you can program them. It can actually handle up to about 200 or so pages of this. And it has done amazing. So when I'm on when I'm on this, I have gallery view for speaker view. Next, chat participants. I can turn it. I'm not worried about doing it all with a mouse, and so I'm able to be a little bit quicker for myself. There are other ones, and you can also get it for your iPhone and your Android phone to act as it and use that as the controller and not pay the money for the actual device.
Awesome. That just got real nerdy real fast, which is awesome. Which is
that's
totally awesome.
I am a nerd.
Make sure you share that in the group too, because I think that's where folks are like, I think this is like, for me, I'd be like, that's super cool. I'm gonna see if somebody in my church can do it. But that's awesome, because those are the kind of things that are like, oh, we don't even know they exist. So that's great. I use Google Slides, and so that's created both. It's so simple, but also some other pieces that we're trying to figure out how to use better, because some things show up that I don't want them to all the time. So I don't know how many of you all are using Google Slides, but that's kind of what we are trying to do. All right, other folks, hacks that you've had, things or questions you still have about anything, sound, video, Zooming, anything else that you've discovered newly about things? Yeah, Mike, go for it. Introduce yourself.
Hi, Mike Eastman from clerk at Newport, Oregon, First Presbyterian Church. Closed captions, when that became available, and we do have someone Zooming from home who really needs that. First thing I discovered was that they don't get it unless you enable it as the host. So I have to put it up. I thought it was, you enable it, everybody's choice, but I've got to actually do it. But more recently, I discovered that it doesn't matter what my settings are for the size locally. That's not the same as settings as what they have. So I don't have to make it really big locally, and they can. So
great. Yes, thank you. That's all. I mean, it's always an interesting thing to figure out, what do you control versus what do they control, right? I'll share one more hack and then George. So we got Zoom bomb for the first time seriously on Thursday. Like, awful. I've been in a few meetings where that's happened, and we had gotten lazy, and so I mean, I think it was basically, most parachuting accidents, it's experts that mess up, right? Because you kind of forget about stuff, and so we're just cruising along, and all of a sudden, all this awful stuff came in, and we had forgotten that there is now in the security the suspend all participants activity button, and both me and the co-host were like, ah, what do we like? We just totally freaked. So just reminding, and so we reinstated our pre-worship conversations again about more specifics about what happens. So like I hit the suspend participant so we're not accidentally taking it off and on as we're all trying to do it. And then our tech deacons are in charge of finding the person and dropping them. But we got hit and totally were not prepared to just go to security, do that, because I don't think that's where it was before, but I may be wrong because we hadn't played with it. But that would be one, just to familiarize yourself again with all the buttons and all of your options, because I think Zoom changes stuff sometimes and we're like, what, and Wade Halva over in the Zoom group is great. We'll post here's what's coming up in the changes. Read his note whenever he posts there, because he posts like, here are the things that matter in the upgrades. So that's, for me, that was one. I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta remember that. George, go for it.
Yeah, this one may be an old one, but I've discovered that a lot of people are not aware of this. If you go into your settings and make sure you have clicked always show Zoom screen, then if you share your screen and move to that Zoom screen, the people are seeing your Zoom screen. And it's a great teaching tool because people go, well, how do you do that? I don't know how to do it. And you can instruct them by showing them what your screen looks like and what the dialog boxes are and what they should click.
Yeah, that's great, George. I don't know. Does everybody get what George is talking about?
So forth. And I used it because
yeah, go for it,
I
George.
get it, but I haven't been able to get it to work.
Yeah. So, I mean, so if you're trying to run trainings and you want to show them what you're doing on Zoom, normally you can't see all of the controls in Zoom because you wouldn't want to show those, but there is a setting where you can actually show all that, which makes it much better to do some training. That's what you're talking about, right, George?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good feature. Oh, here's another thing I learned like this past week. Clearly I have too much going on in my mind. That if you are sharing back and forth and you're doing window, like if you're dropping windows back and forth, if you're in Chrome, right? Or if you're on a Mac, you got to make sure you put your Chrome window first. Otherwise it shows whatever window is first in line, if that makes sense. If you're on a Mac, I don't know how PCs are, and you're sharing, you do your 3 swipe up or whatever to choose your windows. When you do a share screen back, you got to make sure that your Chrome one or whatever is first in order. What that looks like if you don't is Good Friday service. We had 300 and something people because it was a denominational thing. Everybody got to see my desktop because I had them in different order. I don't know, Kathy, if you noticed that, but I freaked out a little bit on my side. No? Oh, good. So I was like, ah! So because I had them in the wrong.
We expect there to be grace, don't we?
We do most of the time, except I don't offer it to myself. Who does that?
That was a marvelous service too. It was absolutely fabulous.
Well, good. Well, good. Other than I was like, oh, everybody just saw my. Anyway, so but I've realized that if I don't have those in the right order when you're going back to share your screen, or share your browser, whatever you're using to do your sharing, to just put those in the right order. There you go. That may be more confusing than I meant it to be, but if it's happened to you, know what I'm talking about. All right, other hacks. Yeah, go for it, Marty.
I don't have a hack, but I had a question that came to mind when we were talking about closed captioning. At APSI, they were able to share, Wilmington Island Presbyterian Church, Savannah, Georgia, and she, her. They were able to share like the process in like 5 different languages. I'm very interested in being able to do that for our presbytery because we have churches that have other languages. And so is there anyone using anything to do that?
I know only because I spoke at APSI. They hired people to come in and give them permission to do that translating. So they brought in particular folks. It starts to get expensive if you can't do that. But I know that's what they did, is they just had people come in, assign them, and then you have to, if you need that, then you choose which one you're gonna use. I don't know, is anybody else doing languages or with the closed captioning? I haven't seen. We've been using rev.com, and it has nothing to do with the reverend.com. I don't know why it's called Rev, but I've used that for transcribing a lot, and we use that as our closed captioning. And we've been really satisfied with it. It's not free. I think it's $20 a month or something, but we've been really happy with them in terms of how their transcribing is coming out. I don't know how folks have experienced the closed captioning that Zoom does. We haven't been using it. Is it pretty good, or how has it been for you all? I don't know. Does everybody use it now?
They use that at APSI as well, the closed caption. And so I was intrigued. So I did it with a Bible study group just to play with it. So I said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do today. And so, put it in through the host space, and then they could turn it off or on if they
Right.
wanted it, because some of it's distracting. Like a lot of people don't like chats popping up. But for the folks that, and it was fairly accurate. There was only a couple times where it threw a random word in that was not what the person said. So it was fairly
Okay.
decent.
Good. Awesome. Great. Other questions you've had, hacks you've learned when you're like, I should have known that. Anything? No? I will say, here's one of my things that whenever I try, it's really hard for me not to have a meeting and they're like, here's how you can fix your meeting. But I will often do that. I think so. One of the things that I think is really important is lighting. And it's not an expensive get just to get better lighting. We are, as we're thinking about hybrid, we're starting to think about a package of things that we might send to people who are going to be in our worship service. So a better mic, just a light they can put on. Usually it's just a way that we can have some consistency with how folks are showing up, so that we don't want to be super slick and performancy, but we also want to make sure that that the setting doesn't distract from people being able to experience people's leadership through Zoom. So we're playing with how do we create a bundle that can be delivered or mailed back and forth of a microphone and lighting, so that when people are leading worship, or liturgists from another place, or a preacher from another place, that we can be a little bit more consistent in our look. So that's what, I don't know if that's more of a hack as much as a pet peeve. Maybe we should have a session on pet peeves. That might be a better one. But that is, so lighting, certainly. I have a swing arm light that is just mounted on my desk. And so and then that just goes up until you can't see it, but and it stays out of my way, because I can't put a ring light here because I have an easel thing that I read off of. So I just use a swing arm lamp, which works really well, and it's brighter than a lot of the rings. So $25 kind of thing. So anyway, I don't know if that might not be a hack. Oh, there you go, Marcia.
So I have this little tiny selfie ring light. I think it was $20 online, and they come cheaper than that, but you can turn it on. It's got different color settings, different color options, and it fits on the edge of an iPad or a phone or a laptop. And I have one other quick tip, and you probably already know this, but if you are getting echo on your sound system when you are in the Zoom meeting and you can't figure out where else it is, if you are connected to the Zoom meeting for monitoring purposes, disconnect audio on the device that you're on. We have our pastor do that, and our tech person ends up having to do that. That makes communication for your test person a little more difficult, but it gets rid of the echo. So probably you already know that, but if it's one of those things that you can forget easily when you're troubleshooting and you're trying everything else, try disconnect audio on any monitoring devices.
Sure. Thank you. That's yes. It's always. I think it is. And now that we've been at this for a while, we're all like, oh, this thing happened again. Oh, we forgot to remind people wear headphones or wear, like all this stuff of like, oh yeah, we have to. And I think that's like anything, right? We get used to it and we make assumptions and so kind of revisiting
Well,
that. Thank you.
even with headphones, you can get echo if the headphones have a mic that you cannot mute. So you want to be aware of that.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Other hacks, other questions that you might have that might be helpful for people. Again, or pet peeves. Feel free. I got a whole list of them. I have super high control needs and expectations about everybody in my world. So,
Well, I've got a pet peeve, and that
Yeah.
is we will mute everybody, and there's this one person. I don't think she does it on purpose, but she'll unmute and she'll be talking to her cat or something else. And it's like, and it pops up at the most inappropriate moments. We'll have muted everyone and we don't allow them to unmute, and it still, she bypasses it. That's my pet peeve. We haven't figured it out. We're working
so
on that.
you've marked don't allow to unmute when you mute all and you hit that box, and she's still able to unmute.
And she's not a co-host. She does it. We don't know how. She does it, and she doesn't know how. I mean, she's not tech savvy enough to have done anything.
So are you always having somebody there to just mute her back? Just having to yeah, that's, well, it's kind of like church, right? I mean, people just do stuff and you're like, yeah, we adapt, we figure it out. And as long as it's not super like harmful to the community, we just kind of roll with things, but that's great. Thank
I
you.
have a question for that. Sally, is she on an iPhone or an iPad?
Yes.
That's what it is because of the touch screen and the way that the way you unmute and mute and that configuration on the iPhone and iPad software. It's because she's touching the screen and it goes to unmute.
Even though we don't give her that permission.
Because I'm sorry, this is my opinion. Mac doesn't play well with others.
Yep. What?
Okay.
The biggest fight, or one of the biggest fights I ever started on Facebook, because I'm an Android person. I've always been an Android person. I had to go to Mac because of Zoom. I was on a Chromebook and ran worship off of a Chromebook for 6 months. Is I put something like, okay, for all of you group texting off of an iPhone, we're not all on iPhones. And boy, you would have thought that I said Beyonce was bad. Like, I don't know what it was, but you would have thought that I just said the worst thing ever. And the way people were going at each other. So Eric, I agree with you. Mac does not play well with others. And that's not opinion. That is fact. No, I'm just kidding. I have a Mac and an Android, so now I don't know what to do. Jeff, you were going to say something earlier. I'm sorry.
I was going to suggest that the issue might be that the person that was accidentally unmuting herself might need to just update Zoom. But if it's an Android, if it's an iPhone or an iPad, that probably isn't the issue. It probably is a Mac want it our way issue.
That's a good thing. I did not realize that because I don't have an iPhone or an iPad. So I did not realize that overrides, because we have a couple of those folks. I'm like, come on, what are you doing? You just hear them ruffling in the back. Like, it's just, but what it does is it impacts your music sometimes, it impacts other sound. So we have our folks like, we just got to stay on top of things. So thank you though. So that's a good one. All right. Others, hacks, pet peeves, no names, if you're going to call somebody out.
Actually, I have a question. And it's on the back end. We don't check the reports very often, but every now and then I'm curious. And sometimes I can find the report that lists who all was a participant. And sometimes all I get are numbers. And I don't know why it disappears. Does anybody else have this experience? Like today, I cannot find the list of like what devices were joined in yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know. Like anybody in charge of running your reports? Go ahead, Marty.
I pull a report to do attendance. And so when you go into administrator, then you go to reports, and then it pulls up active user or active accounts. Click on there, and then I click on that date's number, and then it shows the list for me. And it's
That's
been
what I'm
consistent
doing,
for me,
and-
but I'm
and
not.
it's just not wanting to show me. Maybe it'll come back sometime.
I have a pet peeve.
Go for it, George.
All right, under reports, and if somebody knows how to get around this, when you're looking at trying to get a list of who was on your call, the order that it puts people in is, I think it puts it not by alphabetical order, but in the order in which they joined the Zoom call. And it's crazy. If you guys experience that, it makes no sense to me.
That is probably what it is, because that's often how Zoom looks at things, is the order in which people came in. So if you drop out of your meeting, the hosting goes to the first person who came in, that kind of stuff. So that's probably, yeah, there isn't, it's not alphabetical. I know. Yeah. I don't know if we have any hacks for you though.
I've tried. I don't know any.
Yeah, we do a thing every 3 or 4 months. We actually are doing one today where we dump all of the names who have ever worshiped with us in that span, and we send a note that just says, hey, you've been with us, we're not adding you to any lists, we just want to thank you for being here and joining us, here's a couple of links if you're interested, kind of thing. But try to do that every once in a while. And I that's been a couple of extra steps to clean that list up, really, for our admin. But fortunately, super good with Excel and Sheets. So that's one of the things that we've been doing with reports. But I'm trying to think if we do anything else. We just, for even attendance, we just look at the number and add 20%. That's kind of been how we've been doing it. But yeah, any other report hacks that you all have, or things that you've used the reports in any way that are interesting? Some folks, we did have a debate at our church about whether it's okay for us to contact people who did not opt into being contacted, because right, their email shows up that they've been in a meeting only because they have a registered account in Zoom, not because they said to us we can have their information. Unlike when you register for our worship service, you're giving us your information. So we had that debate in church, and we kind of were like, I was not all that comfortable with just contacting everybody who shows up for a gathering, because they didn't opt in to do that. So that was kind of my own thing that we've had to think about. All right, we are at 9 o'clock. I am so grateful for you, as usual. I will make sure this meeting gets posted in the next couple of days, and I'm going to post something in the Facebook group about hacks. So if you've heard of anything, you've thought of something, immediately as meeting's done, you're going to go like, oh, here's one. Please share it there or ask your question. Hoping that that'll get some conversation headed on going over there. And hope you have a good rest of the week. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in a month. All right, bye.